Hello world, I am Curtis Simpson, and this is Objective Typography News number 52. Per usual, I have plenty of typography news to get into for you today. I remembered like halfway through that sentence that I didn't say the date. Today is Friday, May 1st, 2026, and like I said, I have a lot of typography news for you. Dargon released like right after the last episode, so we're going to talk about that in a second. Lacoste has a new visual identity. So far, all I've seen is the new Wordmark, but it's pretty cool. It's serif now. It feels very appropriate. ChatGPT Images 2.0. This happened, I don't know, a week or two ago, and we had real typography stuff to talk about, but this week I did have time to check it out, and it's interesting. And then I have a New York Times article that I saw this week that's doing some really cool stuff with CSS, and it really threw me for a loop because I thought that they were working with images or something until I realized that I could highlight the text, select the text. So that's really cool. Going to look at that here in a second. And then we're going to get into some new releases. We got a new release from ArrowType, got a new release from Spirit and Bones, TipoType, DJR, Peregrin Studio, and then we're going to do three deep dives. If you read the description, you know these are all grotesque. We've got Rytual from Superior Type. Man, I'm having trouble talking. Rytual from Superior Type. We have Fabric Grotesk from Fontfabric, and we have GT Mechanik from Grilli Type. These three are all kind of doing their own thing, and we're going to look through the deep dives individually, and then at the end we'll kind of pull it together and look at all three of them compared to the OG, compared to the GOAT, Helvetica. Is it really the GOAT? I'm not sure, but it has persisted, despite the thousands of other Neo-Grotesks that were released. Helvetica is still everywhere. So it makes sense to compare it to that. Let's get into these featured stories first. We got 4 featured stories. I'm gonna switch my screen and we'll hop into these. Let me get everything set up over here real quick. Okay. And here we go. So I'll go ahead and put my face on here. Let's see where we land at. Just make it a little smaller. There we go. So we've talked about this for the last 2 episodes. This will be the 3rd and final time that we talk about it. But it is TypeTogether's release of Dargon by Anne Delphine Bourrian. We did a really, really deep dive last week, so I'm not going to give you any details at all. A couple things that I wanted to note, though. We do have the price now. Obviously, you can see the variable there for, let's see. The variable here is $550 for everything. So desktop for everything looks like it's $550 USD. And that's going to include all 16 fonts. So that's going to be all 10 of the text faces and all 6 of the Dargon unseal, they're calling them here, the Dargon display faces that we looked at. That's really cool. I did not realize that it was a variable because the beta version that I had was just static fonts. So pretty cool that there's a variable. I'm assuming that's going to be the weights. But yeah, the other thing that I want to note is that she watched the review and she did message me on Instagram later and said that she had talked to TypeTogether about the criticisms, the constructive criticisms that she received about the old style 0. So if you remember, let's see if we can test this out. I don't know that that's the, we're not actually gonna be able to test it out right now, but last episode, we looked at the old style 0 and it had a horizontal stress on it. She apparently agreed with the comments. I was fine with the original, but I think that there might be an alternate on the way in the future. So anybody that was concerned about that, be concerned no longer. They've heard your, TypeTogether has heard your voices. So I think that's going to be it. I do have 2 links in the description. One is this right here, which is the release where you can go and look at the normal store page. The other is an interview that was released with Anne Delphine. There she is right there. And it's pretty cool. It's just nice. It's an interview by the foundry, interviewing one of their designers. So those things, there's not going to be anything super shocking. It's going to be a lot of positive, but it does give you some insights into the font and things like that, even beyond what I talked about because it's an interview between the designer and the foundry exactly. But if you did miss last episode, definitely go check out that. Skip this episode, go watch the last episode. If you can't watch all of it, skip to the very last chapter and watch this review, because it's a really, really cool typeface. And I think that you will not be disappointed if you spend your time doing that. Let's move on. Lacoste has a new identity. Let me get this loaded up. Let me get a drink of water. So our second featured story here, Lacoste unveils a new visual identity. This is their press release right here. There's not much to it. It does note that they worked with Commission Studio. Let's see if we can find the highlight here. Let me see if I can find it. Commission Studio right here. Boom. I did check Commission Studio's website. They have nothing on there about this yet. I checked their Instagram. They have nothing about this yet. So I will come back to this because I am interested to know what typeface that is. If maybe it's just lettering. I want to see more about the fonts. But for now, I do have the press release images that showed up. And if you don't remember the old Lacoste logo, I guess we could just look this up real quick. It was a sans serif. There it is right there. Pretty wide sans serif, like a lot of brands did. This is the new one right here. I guess we don't need to put these side by side, right? You could see these two. Let's go ahead and make this nice and big. And I think this looks awesome. I think that it matches the brand so much better. You can go back and look, and they are saying that they're drawing this from like archives and his signature and these types of things, but I see no, I don't know. You know how branding is. I see no evidence of that. Maybe there will be like a bigger case study where we see that this does somehow relate to Rene Lacoste. But most of the typeface have been some form of sans serif for the logo that I've ever seen. But I think this is so much better fitting. Everybody thinks of the polo when they think of Lacoste. I know they do more than just polos, but polos feel like serifs. I know that it's tennis, but still, polos feel like serifs. And I think that this looks awesome. And I love to see the continued trend with serifs and moving away from just the general, Helvetica Futura, sans serif, minimalism branding that we saw for like 2 decades. Yeah, I don't know. It looks really nice and it makes sense. You can see it on some of the bags here. And then they've got it on a storefront right here. And I'm not sure if these are mock-ups or not. I don't think the bag is. I'm sure they tested that out, but I'm not sure about the store. You can see they are using the sans serif here still on the wrapping and stuff. So they did mention that this is going to be implemented gradually over time. So like you can go to the website right now and it'll be on there in some places, but it hasn't like fully swapped over. I'm going to be paying attention. The first time, I know this is so dumb, but the first time I see one of the polos with the new logo stitched in a tag, I'm going to get it. All of mine obviously have the old logo, but it's pretty cool. And it's just a nice trend to pay attention to. You can see the Lacoste logo right up here. Let's go to the store real quick and I can show you. It's probably going to take me to the Brazilian store, but we'll try it anyway. So you can see the old typography right here. What is this? This looks like, yeah, it's just Lacoste. It's their brand, their typeface. So they're going to have a new one. I wouldn't even be surprised if they keep the old typography and kind of go both ways with it. Yeah, this is the Brazilian website. Oh, there's the old logo right there. So yeah, they don't even have it on the Brazilian website yet. But you do see some serifs throughout the page. I really like this. I think it's a great, oh, we lost it. It's fine. I think it's a great upgrade. You can see it up there at the top. I think it's very fitting. I think it's on brand. I think it's not like trend chasing or anything like that. And it's nice to see the pendulum swinging back in the other direction. Next up, a little bit of a controversial one here for some people. Let's see if this uploads, loads. I'm not going to let this play in the background because even though it's not YouTube, this video is on YouTube, so I don't want to get dinged for that. Let me go ahead and zoom in on this. I'm not sure how much we should zoom in. Maybe just keep it at regular. So This is the ChatGPT Images 2.0. This was released on April 21st. So I guess we're about, I don't know, 10 days behind right now. That's fine. I did not test this out. I don't use ChatGPT. I have used ChatGPT, but I primarily use Claude if I'm using anything AI. But you could see right here, it looks good. The two things I wrote down a note for what I always think of when I have this. Yeah. So my general reaction with anything AI is basically always the same. Like, this is impressive, and then immediately it's really easy to tear this down if you have any experience or expertise in the area. I think the thing to note with this is going to be that for most people, the little things that we can tear apart with this are not going to matter. They're not going to care about the details. It's going to, and a lot of stuff no one's going to pay enough attention to anyway. Think about how much effort and time you put into anything that you've ever created and post to Instagram. People swipe by it, double tap it. Maybe sometimes they swipe through your slides a little bit. For the most part, no one's ever paying a lot of attention to this. Does it matter? Yes, of course it matters. Of course the craft matters. Of course the quality matters. You're not going to see an AI generated Lacoste logo, that they just throw up in the store and spend, beyond millions of dollars, sticking this everywhere. A real person's going to create that with craft and it's going to look good. But for a lot of things you can just throw away. This looks pretty good. Easy things to pick apart here. If we can zoom in on this, you can see all of the, I don't know if they're widows or orphans or short lines or whatever it is. You can see these lines here where it says myth, wolves only cause problems, right over here on the right. Hopefully you can see that. As designers, we would never leave a single line or a single word on a line like that. That's just dumb. We would either add more body copy to it to fill it out, or we would enter to the next line and just leave myth on the top there. We'd find a better way to do this. So the things here that are so simple that a Type 101 student would know to do, AI still doesn't really get that right. But at a glance, you can see they do it over and over and over. They do it on the third one here. They're doing it down here with the range here. They're doing it here with the word people here. They do it over and over. And then also there's places where things are left aligned. If you look down here at the 1, 2, 3, 4, you've got stuff that's left aligned, and then it's centered, and then it's centered with a bigger margin, and then it's left aligned again. So there's things that if you look at this at first glance, you're just like, wow, that AI made that? That looks crazy. It looks like a normal layout from a magazine. Obviously, that's what I was trained on. But as typographers, as graphic designers, as just creatives in general, if you've ever set type, it takes 2 seconds to see that either a very bad designer laid this out, I apologize, or it's AI. And in this case, we know that it's AI, but most people won't notice these things. They'll intuit, they'll kind of feel it in their gut that something isn't quite right, but most people won't necessarily know what it is. And that's going to be the problem. People that design with AI and they think, oh, look at this great layout that I made. They'll never know that it's bad, and they won't know what they need to actually fix. I don't speak, up here we were looking at either, I don't know, CJK, I'm not sure which one. I don't read or write that. Indic, I don't read or write that. So I can't tell you if those are good or bad. But you could scroll through this and man, it looks good. And I've seen people talking about this, and I've seen the memes where people are talking to other designers and they're like, are we cooked? Yeah, we're charred. I don't know. Every time something like this comes out, everybody says, this is the worst that it's ever going to be. Okay. Yeah, maybe. But I don't know what that really means in terms of, there's going to be a lot of stuff that imagine you wanted to lay out this poster right here. Unless you literally don't care what's on the poster at all, you literally just do not care what's on it. You don't care what the content is. You don't care what the languages are. Someone's going to have to prompt this with every single thing they want on here. And once they prompted it, I do know that some of them now, Canva has layers where you do it in Canva and it's got the layers that you can edit. That's awesome. That's a great step in the right direction, especially for people that want to use AI. But I don't know. There's just going to be silly mistakes. These are just images right here, but we'll get to some more type. There's going to be people that care about the quality, and this won't be good enough. Even on this right here, the comics, unless you're really like trying to like emphasize one word on a line, I don't think you would put who waits in a place like this. You'd probably just put who waits. Like you would just, why would you cut the line off like that? Those are things that like a normal person would get in 1 second, but this doesn't. But I mean, just like the general vibe of the type, it looks great. I mean, it looks professional at first glance, at like a passing glance. It looks professional. Good lettering on here. I think it's much better at lettering because type, you know, with typography, with fonts, like it needs to be consistent and needs to be perfect with lettering and handwriting and stuff like this. You've got a lot more freedom. But I don't know. I mean, these are just kind of like my general reactions to this. It's the same every time. Like, wow, that's impressive. And like every time it gets a little better. But look at this one. They've even got the bleed and the trim on here. Let's see how this looks. Well, I mean, they're not, unless you just only want a white border. I don't know why you would put a bleed and a trim. Like, why they have these marked out when there's nothing going over the bleed. There's literally no color on this going over the bleed. So if it was within that margin, like you might end up with more of a white border on one. I don't know what the point of that is. Okay, but we don't need to keep looking at this, right? You get it. It's good, but like always, you can kind of tear it apart. Next time it'll be even better. And you know, I don't know what this means. I try to stay really neutral on these types of things, but here you can see every single one of these, and this is a tough one to set, but every single one of these has a single word at the end. Polish, image, intent, new. Like it's just such and new would fit perfectly right there. Just squeeze it underneath the phone. Like things that image would fit right there too. I don't, just like the dumb mistakes that are on here that even like a first year student wouldn't make. But at first glance, it looks great. You get it. Let's move on. This is something a human made, and it's really cool. I mean, I'm assuming a human made this. But this is an article. The article doesn't necessarily matter that much. It's a gifted link, so I don't know how long it lasts. Sometimes these last, 30 days or something. But it is linked in the description. Everything, all the stories are linked in the description. Nothing is sponsored, per usual with the news. They're there for your convenience. This though, I saw this and I was like, oh, that's cool. Like it just looks, it's a font. You can see that it's a font. You can see it's not hand lettered. But it's kind of a cool aesthetic. They've got the outline, they got the stroke on there, different colors. And then just out of habit or curiosity, I was like, can I highlight this? And I was like, oh, holy shit, I can't highlight this. And so then you realize you're dealing with something different here. I guess I could let me go ahead and see if I can duplicate this. I don't know how to duplicate these. Shoot, hold on. I got it. Let me pull this out. So I have the code right here. And this isn't really going to matter. This might actually be kind of a waste of time, but you can see the CSS right here. And what they're doing is they're just doing like a negative letter spacing with a negative 0.125 em, and then they're decreasing the margin and stuff there. That doesn't necessarily matter, but like the letter spacing right here, negative 12%, 12.5%. I think these are actually the same, and then negative 1.25 em. So that's how they're doing this because it's just Franklin Gothic. I got curious, and I was like, I wonder what, because when you highlight it, talking too fast. To investigate this, I started by checking what font, just the app, click it. Okay, NYT Mag Franklin Black. Okay, so it's some version of Franklin Black created for New York Times Magazine. That was my first step, and I was like, I wonder what this like New York Times Franklin Black is, because you go down and all of them are doing this. Every artist has a different, every genre has a different color, and they're all stacking like that, but they're all editable text. And I don't know, I thought it was really, really cool. So I checked it. They've got their own version of Franklin Black. Rip the ripped the WOFF2 from it and dropped it into What Can My Font Do? And it's just Franklin. Like, it's their version of Franklin, you know, but it's just Franklin. There's no overlapping. It's not a color font. It's not doing anything crazy. It's literally just Franklin. And let's see, where were we? Right here. And then I pulled up the code, and it was what I showed you, where they're just literally decreasing the letters. They're adding a stroke to it. They're filling, and then they're adding a color to it with the CSS. But man, it's such like a simple, like perfect thing where they're even doing the leading and stuff here, where they've got the lines really tight. The lines don't quite overlap, but you do get like almost a little bit of a shadow there, where you've got the two strokes going over top of each other. Actually, the M's going over the U here. Yeah, it's really cool. And for somebody that like understands CSS much better than I do, I had 2 classes on HTML, CSS in college, so I'm not an expert by any means. So this might not be very impressive to somebody that understands CSS much better. But I think for a normal person, you wouldn't necessarily think that this is just a font that you can highlight and that they're doing everything with the CSS. It's crazy to me. So really, really cool. Shout out to New York Times on that one. But let's get into some new releases. I'm gonna get a drink of water, take my face off the camera so I don't block anything. Now that we're getting into some more important things here. Okay, gonna get a drink of water. This first new release is actually a future font. So this is a new release in the sense that it's reached what they always call the finish line. It's at version 1.0. So if you don't know, future fonts are typically fonts released in beta, and then you can support the font and you can purchase it early for a much lower price than you would when the font is fully released. So this will be kind of a higher price for future fonts, $195 for the family. But as you can see here, the license extends to desktop, web, and app. It's a little bit, there are some restrictions to it. There's no video, and it specifically states YouTube, so that hurts my heart. And then there's no politics, religion, crypto, or NFTs or anything like that. You would have to get permission from ArrowType, from Steven. But this is Kyrios. It is from ArrowType, and you can get it on Future Fonts, but I'm going to go ahead and look at this on his website because it gives a little bit more insight into it. And I'm going to go ahead and read you this description right here. It says Kyrios is a curious, slightly psychedelic black letter family. Its interpretation of lettering from a stone-carved monument created in the late 1800s, found in the Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, New York, and it's made for modern typographic fun. And you can see a little bit of it right here. I do not think that I linked this in the description, but I will add it afterwards. When I add chapters, I will add this. There's Steven right there. I don't think that he would copyright strike me, but I don't want to risk the YouTube automatically doing it. So I'm just going to show you pause screens right here. But you can see he's got this video that I will link in the description. Otherwise, you can look it up. It's on ArrowType's YouTube. But you can see where he's pulling the inspiration from, and it's from these tombstones, or this tombstone, and it looks really, really cool in there. You can see that it's pushed out from the tombstone itself. But let's look at the font. Let's look at the font a little bit. It's got 5 styles, 5 different weights here, and then it's got optical sizes on it. It's variable. I've downloaded this. I've played with it. We're gonna do a deep dive on it next week because it's amazing. You can see proportional optical sizes right here. So automatically in most browsers that would adjust for you. The optical sizes would obviously you could turn that off, but it's got regular up to ultra for the weights. It's got alternates that are more legible, alternates that are less legible. It has a lot of cool stuff going on. Obviously, it's black letter, like we said, so it's going to be very specific for the use cases that you can use this for. But in terms of black letter, this looks really, really cool. I do have some stats for you. We'll look at those and when we look at these Instagram specimens right here. He's got a couple of animations that he made in Blender. Like I said, 5 styles, variable. There are weights and optical sizing, glyph count of 1,420. That's pretty deep for a display font. 32 OpenType features, 289 languages, like we saw, you can purchase this from Future Fonts or from the Foundry. There we go, right there. And it's going to be $195 for the family. Like I said, licenses mostly inclusive, so that's going to be desktop, web, and app. No video, and then no politics, religion, crypto, NFTs. But I think it's really cool. Let's see if we can play around with this just a little bit. Maybe I shouldn't bother. Maybe I shouldn't waste time today playing around with this. Maybe we should just wait until next week to play around with this. Do I have it open right here? Let me just give you a sneak peek real quick. 53. Here we go. That's not it. Here it is right here. So super quick sneak peek of Kyrios. It does have it has the weight, like we said. Let's get this weight going here. Boom. Nice and smooth, really cool. But it also has an optical size. And so the optical size is it's handling the width, but it's also moving that X height around. Let's get this nice and thin. You can see the X height goes up. Some of the glyphs are changing. They're simplifying in here. But this has also just a bunch of OpenType features over here. So this is a preview for next week, but Kyrios from ArrowType looks really, really cool. I completely missed keyframe holders comment, CSS maybe. If you were talking about the New York Times, yeah, CSS. You were right. You got it right much faster than I did when I was looking at it. Our next new release is going to be coming from Spirit and Bones. This is a fairly new foundry for me. I was not previously familiar with this foundry, Spirit and Bones. So I'm going to pull this up on iLive Typography first. Let me close out some of these other things. I'm going to pull this up on iLive Typography first because this is where I first saw it, but then we're going to get into the Instagram, and then we're going to look at the PDF specimen because it's pretty cool. This is only for sale on third-party websites. The Spirit and Bones, they don't have a website you can purchase from, but this is actually let me pull this up, fonts in use. This is actually a revival of a typeface called AGA Basalt, which is, I apologize, which is right here. AGA Basalt, which is a solid version of the typeface AGA Script. And you can see that right here. You've probably seen a typeface similar to this before. Let me go and pull this up. Early 1900s, this released, and it looks like it's from the early 1900s. It looks really cool. It's got a lot of character to it. The cool thing about this is that this font has never really existed in lowercase. There was, I'll get into this, well, no, I should talk about it now in case we don't do a deep dive. But if you look at the type specimen right here in the PDF, you'll see a lot of different examples, but you'll see the history of it right here. And there was a lowercase created in 1934, but the only instance of it that's left is from a World War II poster, and it's only these characters right here. So Lena built out the entire font. Lena Schmidt built out this entire font from those characters. So it's a revival of a font from the early 1900s called AGA Basalt, and this is the only one that exists with the lowercase. Should we even bother? No, I'm not gonna bother with the Instagram. The Instagram's cool. She's got a bunch of different examples of it here, but I think the PDF does the best job of showcasing this. And I'm gonna go ahead and do it like that. Let's go ahead and make this full screen. Boom. And we'll just go through this real quick. You might note down here at the bottom, there was a really, really wide version of it. This is what I love about this typeface. Oh, it looks like it's done. Oh, that's the original designer right there. Lena Schmidt is Spirit and Bones. Edward Ega is the original designer, where the name of the typeface comes from. So the original that I've ever seen looks like this. It looks Art Deco. You saw the one that has the lines through it, Ega Script. But this one here, you've probably seen typefaces similar to this, but I've never seen one with the lowercase like this, and I've never seen one that gets so wide. So there are 5 different styles on this. It is static as far as I know, but look how wide this is. She's saying 5 weights. That's interesting that she's calling these weights rather than unless there are weights and sizes. And she's calling that the weight. That's interesting that it's not labeled as the width instead. But I guess they're just getting really, really heavy, so it's getting wider based on that. But the X height, that's interesting because the height stays the same. Okay, I'll go with her terminology. Ega Basalt. Then there's medium, bold, extra bold, and heavy. And the heavy gets really, really wide. You're not going to be able to use this for much of anything, but it looks really, really cool. And I really appreciate it. There are some other fun things. Small caps. If you've been around the channel before, you know I love some small caps. But the lowercase is really what makes this font stand out from any of the alternatives, because there is one that I saw. There's one right here, Ega Script, that has all caps on it. House Industries has Plink tracks right here. But these also all have the lines through them. So in terms of this, this is kind of your best bet, and it's the only one that exists with lowercase. So really, really cool. That was Ega Basalt from Spirit and Bones. And I didn't say the price tag here, but let me go ahead and check the price. For the full family, it's going to be $112. So all 5 weights for $112 on I Love Typography. Prices might vary on other websites, but this is where I saw it first, so that's where I'm just going to go ahead and report from it. Three more new releases here. The first of these 3 is from TipoType. So we're getting a little bit more rational, a little bit more simple, a little more Swiss here. We've got TipoType releasing Signat. Actually, when I downloaded the trials for this, it said Signal. So I think that this typeface may have originally been titled Signal, and then for whatever reason was renamed Signat, unless they just misspelled it on the font files or the license. But you can see it's a very, very geometric grotesque. Those are my words, not theirs. But look at how geometric the O's and the P and everything looks. Obviously not a perfect circle, but you know, it looks like a neo-grotesque, like a geometric-ish neo-grotesque. Looks like a modern neo-grotesque. I'm sure it would fit perfectly fine alongside all of the ones that you know and love. Gotham, Montserrat, any of these ones that are popular right now. The thing that stands out on this one for me, though, is the price tag. $99 for the full family. So they're not selling them per weight, they're selling it by the family. $99 for the full family. Why is this significant? Because it's 18 styles, 9 weights plus italics. It is static as far as I can see. Glyph count on it is 518 features, 25 OpenType features, 287 languages. The trial says that it's limited, but when I downloaded it, it seems to be full. It has all the features and all the characters. So that's really cool. But yeah, I'm not sure if this $99 is a launch price, because if you do look at the web license is the full $249. So let's see if we can find the buying options here. So you can see I apologize. You can see the web license right here is $249. The app is significantly more expensive at $4,233. Okay, but the desktop license is what we benchmark it from, and I downloaded this one as well, played around with it. It's fine. It feels really smooth. It's got like I said, 25 OpenType features on it. It feels pretty nice. Do we still have that open? I might be able to show you real quick. Here's Signat right here, and I'll have to find out if it's Signat. But you can see it's static, but you know it's kind of what you expect. It looks great and bold. It's going to be obliques. Let me confirm that it's going to be obliques and not like italics. I mean, they're calling it italic, but you can see it's just, it's oblique. It's just kind of shifting it. There you go. So that is Signat. It looks nice. I think the real story here is the value. It's competing in a pretty saturated field. And with any of these neo-grotesques, it's going to be very, it's going to come down to the foundry. It's going to come down to the story. It's going to come down to the alternates and things like that. But then in the end, if you can't afford it, then you can't get it. So I think that's really the most compelling thing here. $99 bucks. Maybe that puts it kind of in a price category like right above Google fonts, you know, because you could get a Google font that looks pretty similar to this. You could get Roboto that could do way, way more, but everybody uses the fonts that are on Google Fonts, and this would be, you know, just that one little bit of exclusivity for 99 bucks. I think that's a pretty good deal. That was Signat from TipoType. Next one here is coming from DJR. This is part of his Font of the Month club. So April's Font of the Month is Baby Condor. Great name, great name. This is a follow-up to his typeface Condor, which was released in 2010, I believe. Let me pull this up on Fonts in Use. There it is right here. Yeah, 2010, released through Font Bureau. And let's look at this page right here first before we go into Baby Condor, because I want to give you some perspective on where this has been used. We can see it in Fantastic Four right here. Very nice. We can see it right here. Let's go back. We can see it on the Artemis. It's the Hansen right there. You can see it right here in this right here as well, Jeremy Hansen's mission patch. That's really, really cool. You can see it on Jeopardy below where it says Masters there. So this is a font that has seen significant use in high profile use cases. You can see a Spotlight Marvel right there, Marvel Spotlight right there. Not what it was designed for. And DJR, David Jonathan Roth, was sort of surprised by this. It does have 60 different styles for it. So Condor is pretty deep. It's got condensed versions. It's got wide versions. It's got a lot going on. But it was never designed for small sizes. And that's where Baby Condor comes in. Right now, you can buy this for 24 bucks on the link that's in the description, djr.com. But you can see it right here. It might not look too different yet, but let me scroll down and we'll see this compared next to each other. So this was being used in smaller cases than it probably should have been used. So you can see Condor regular and bold right here on top, and you can see Baby Condor regular and bold on bottom. I am going to do a full test and side-by-side of these, so I will give you a deep dive on this next week in an upcoming episode. But you can see immediately that the contrast is just too much on Condor, and some of those thins get way too thin for small sizes. Also, the spacing is much tighter because it's a display typeface. With that contrast, it's for display. So the spacing increases here, the contrast decreases, and it's still not, you know, admittedly, it's not a text font. It's not a typeface that was ever meant for text, but people are using it that way. So DJR has created a version that works much better. So he's saying this isn't like a text font, but it's a textified version of Condor made for smaller sizes. So I think this is a really practical release. It makes a lot of sense. It's an expansion in like the best way, and that is because he's listened and watched to how it's being used in the real world, and then made a better version for how people are using it. So, you know, he wouldn't have to do anything. People would keep using Condor. People would keep using this. You can see the high profile cases, you know, Fantastic Four, Marvel, Jeopardy, literally Artemis is using this. Like, there's people would keep using this whether he released this or not, but it's such a practical, good faith thing to do to like release a text version of this, because that's how people are using it at these small sizes. Actually, if we go to the Artemis one here, there's a really cool, yeah, like here, right here, see the stitching on this patch? Can we see how big it is? So you can't really see how big it is, but it's this, that's got 7. I don't know what a 7-sided one is called. Someone let me know. But that patch right there that's on below his left chest, that's the patch. And so you can see how small this Hansen would be. So stitching something like that in Condor was never the intention. You know, whoever stitched this made do, and you can see they really reduced the contrast on it, and they did a good job with that. So shout out to whoever made this. Probably this one right here, Ingenium Boutique. Yeah, that seems to be where it was designed. So shout out to them for making it work. That looks very nice, but in the future, hopefully they'll be able to do it much better with Baby Condor. So expect a deep dive on that in the future. I do have that one, and I have access to Condor through Adobe fonts, so that should be pretty interesting to see how they compare. Next up is our last new release. Let me check. Man, I'm sorry, guys. I am missing chat. Let me see here. Keyframe holder says Signat looks really nice. I agree. Signat looks nice. Here it is right here. It looks really clean. And like I said, it's in a saturated field, but I agree. It looks very nice. And for the price, you know, the price tag, 99 bucks, I think it puts it in that, you know, that price range for like someone that cares, but, you know, is on a little bit of a budget. Daryl says Septagon, not a transformer. Septagon, is that what it's called? Yeah, I'll go with that. Septagon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. Yeah. Not a shape that I see every day, but there it is, and it's using Condor. We have one more new release, and then we're going to get into some deep dives. This one caught my eye on Instagram, of all places, so I'm going to pull that up first. It's not that I'm never on Instagram, it's just that I don't typically, I don't know, it's not the place where I see typefaces first. I go to check to see if they've published any cool specimens or anything like that, but here it is right here. This is Peregrin Studios Ashcroft, and this is only their third type release. Funny enough, one of their fonts, which one was it? Denton, was used in the 2025 presidential campaign for Kamala. Kamala. I mean, whatever you think about politicians doesn't necessarily matter. But the fact that one of their first two typefaces was used on a major presidential campaign is pretty telling in terms of the quality of what they're putting out there. But this one right here is called Ashcroft. Hopefully I said that in the beginning before I started scrolling through these and blabbing on about unrelated things. I don't have a lot of information about this one because I don't have a full trial on it. There is a limited trial that you can download, but I really liked just the general vibe of it. Obviously you can see it's a flared serif. But I liked their description here. It says, born from stone, built for screen, Ashcroft balances carved form with human warmth, brings tactile, handmade tension to a typeface fit for modern use. We don't need to read the rest of it, but it's saying the roots are from early 20th century British lettering. The one thing I did take a little bit of that I didn't necessarily agree with is as a period when craft was taken seriously. I don't doubt that craft was taken seriously then. I think it's a little bit dismissive to imply that craft is not important to the type designers. We look at hundreds of typefaces on here every, you know, in the last year, and I think there were very few designers that don't care about craft. Here though, I really enjoy this, so I'll swing the opposite way and give them a compliment. I love when we get when we get references of what the inspiration was, and you can see a few different ones right here. Looks like we've got some stone carvings, some specimens of, I can't read what that one is, I'll have to dig into it a little bit, but some posters and signage and things like that, and you can see it looks familiar, it looks similar, and that makes sense. But I do agree that I don't disagree that craft was important then. These looked very, you know, very purpose-built. They look really nice. It looks like people cared about the craft. I just take a little bit, I find it a little bit dismissive that the implication is that craft is no longer important to designers. I would guess, though, that people probably spent more time on what they were doing, and they were definitely making them by hand. So in that regard, yeah, they probably didn't have quite as tight of deadlines, which would be a nice thing in this world. But look at this. I thought that this ampersand was really cool. The ET, that is an alternate on there. But this has some really cool stuff going on. I would love to do a deep dive on this one. I'm going to have to reach out and see if we can get it. But it looks cool just all on its own. But it's got that cool ampersand. It's got swashes, as you can see here in Amazonia. It looks really well built. And I do think that they were up to the task of creating something that's very craft heavy. Let's see if we can zoom in on this, because I want to show you these swashes. You're not going to get a good look at them, but you'll get kind of enough of a look at them. You can see right here, we got small caps right here. Awesome. I really want to test those out and see how they look in context. But what I'm most interested in are these swashes right here. You can see how calligraphic it is, and with those swashes. I know this is a flared serif and it's based on stone carvings and stuff like that, but stone carvings were based on based on calligraphic pen stroke or brush strokes. Or maybe broad nibbed pens. I guess they would have to be pretty big broad nibbed pens though, so I doubt that. Or maybe they enlarged them after they wrote it with a pen. I don't know enough about it. I'll have to go do my research. But these look really nice. I like that a lot. Let me zoom back up to the top here and we will finish up with Ashcroft. Do they have anything on Instagram? Yeah, I already showed you these on Instagram. They look really nice. That's what drew my attention. Oh, there's Denton right there. Look at that. They've got it penned, I guess. Denton in the background there. Very nice typeface. But today we were looking at Ashcroft. This is a new release from Peregrin Studios. I didn't even look at the price on this one. Let me see if we could find it real quick. Price on this one for yourself on desktop. So if you just got a desktop and web license, that's interesting. 198 euros for this on desktop. Okay. Yeah, 200 bucks. It looks nice. I would like to test this out a little bit more before I gave any kind of opinion on it, but I like it. It looks different from a lot of stuff we look at. We don't see a ton of flared serifs, and I do like the period they're pulling from. And once again, we're seeing a lot of typefaces that are not, just neo-grotesques. And now I'm going to completely change script and look at 3 different neo-grotesques for these deep dives, but hopefully it will be worthwhile. I think it will be. I'm going to get a drink of water and we will get into this first one. So we have seen all 3 of these in previous episodes, but I just did the announcements. Now we're going to do some deep dives. We're going to be looking at Superior Type. We're going to be looking at Fontfabric, and then we're going to finish up with Grilli Type, and then we'll look at all 3 of them together briefly. But they're all, they're all in that category. Let me go ahead and just give you a quick preview. Let's close out next week's. Let me give you a quick preview of the 3 all here on screen. If you showed this to your mom, unless your mom's a designer, you showed this to one of your friends, they would look at these and be like, oh, it's all the same font, right? They look very, very similar. I think if someone saw these in a paragraph, they would not tell these apart. But we've got Helvetica on top, Fabric Grotesk next up, Rytual, and then GT Mechanik on the bottom there. And I did not plan this, but it just kind of worked out this way, that they all kind of fill that same space. But I think each one of them is doing it in their own way, and I really appreciate that. So I'm going to try and point out those things that kind of make them different and make them stand out. So we're going to start out here with the first deep dive is going to be Rytual from Superior Type. I'm not going to spend too much time on the website, just going to scroll through this real quick so you can see their specimens and stuff. I'll go ahead and... No, I'll wait. We'll hop into Affinity in 2 seconds. 1,1000, 2,1000. Here we go. As you can see, that's a variable font right there. Let me get back out of this. Messed up where I was. Okay, so this is a workhorse grotesk, but it's doing some interesting things. And I think it really packs a punch for what it's got going on. I'm going to go ahead and show you the variable axes on this, then I'll show you the details. Let me go ahead. So it's going to get messed up because I've got 2 different ones on here, but we'll go ahead and do it anyway. So it's got a width slider on here. Let's get everything at like a normal weight, 400. So it's got a width slider. The widest that it gets is the normal, just the regular weight. And then it's got condensed and narrow, but it's got a slider, so you can get this anywhere in between. Not getting a little bit of a lag right now. That's nothing to do with the font as far as I know. But you can see you got the slider, so you can get super narrow. And then you've got the weight slider, and you can go very, very, very light. This is hairline light. I think he's calling it extra light on here. No, calling it thin, but that's damn near hairline. I'll give him to it that it's thin. It's not like 1 pixel wide, but that's practically hairline in my opinion. And it looks good. It looks like it's got good bones. If a font can still look good at hairline, then it's probably a decent font. The K looks a little funny at hairline I'll use their terms. The K looks a little funny at thin, particularly the lowercase, because that crossbar looks so big. But I mean, in context, you're not probably going to be using you're going to be using this really thin weight at display sizes for sure. You're not going to be doing like anything small where you really lose track of it. But then you come up to the heaviest. What is this one? They're going to call this black, I think. Let me see. Black. When you get into these really deep variable fonts, sometimes it's hard to scroll through the sizes, and it's just much easier to use the variable sliders. But you can see how thick this gets when it gets up to the black sizes. This all just basically fills in on itself. This is all ink. You're gonna want to print with this big, even with the ink traps in there. That that's not gonna save you. If you're trying to print small, this M and this N is just gonna look like a block. The one thing that it's doing though is it's chopping off these terminals. We saw this a couple weeks ago or a week ago or so. Chopping off those terminals, not on every single character, but on the ones that are that would typically have that the diagonal lines here, the diagonal stroke. So you can see the K cuts off here, the M cuts off here. I did think this was kind of amusing. Let me get to like a normal width on this. I did think that the M was kind of amusing because they're cutting off the terminals to make them fit tighter together, but then they went with a splayed M on here. So if we get down to like a lower weight, let's get to something normal. You've got those terminals that are cutting off so you can stack stuff tighter together, but then you've splayed your M, so it's taking up so much more space. Just one of the quirks of the fonts. I guess it does match the W a little bit better. It's definitely not something that would be a deal breaker for me because I'm not too interested in smashing these together real tight. But let's say that you were doing something, I don't know, what would you even... Monday. Like if you were trying to smash this together real tight, the splayed M, you know what though? The splayed M, when you're going real heavy like that, is going to give you some bigger negative space. So maybe that was what the decision was there. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was kind of amusing that the splayed M is in there on a typeface that's kind of cutting off the terminals so you can push it closer together. Maybe that wasn't the sole intent, but that's what I always think of when I see those. Okay, we got to keep moving on this because got a lot going on. Rytual Thin is a winner. Yeah, Rytual Thin's pretty fun. Oh, what we're doing here. Let's get the weight down, then we can look at both sides of it. Yeah. It's got a very nice skeleton to it. Very nice bones. I'm not sure what the technical term would be on that, but that's what I'm going to call it. And then it does have a slant slider too. So let me get this a little bit heavier. And then it has the italic slider. So you can slant it. Obviously, you're probably like 99% of the time, you're just going to like click italic. You're not going to do this slider, but if you wanted to, you get kind of somewhere in between. Probably best for some kind of animation or rollover or something like that. I don't think you're going to use one of those in-betweens. Maybe for a logo though. If you want a logo that's just sliding, that's slanted just a little bit. Okay, let's get into the details real quick. Like I said, superior type, Peter. Let me see if I can pronounce this properly. I did write it down. Peter Kushera. And I spoke to him on Instagram. Very nice guy. 54 styles on this because we've got the 3 axes, we've got 9 weights plus italics, 1,188 glyphs, 35 open type features, 368 languages. Purchase it from the Foundry. Comes with a full trial, so that's what you'll see right here. I'm using this, not a review license, the full trial license. It's got a price tag to match the punch that it's packing here, and it's 1,620 euros for the full family on desktop. And that's going to come with a standard-ish license. I say standard-ish. We'll look at that at the end. They're charging a little bit extra for logo, social, and merchandise. They are very upfront about it, and the prices increase are like 10%, so it's not the end of the world. But like I said, 54 styles on this. So the price tag is going to be a little bit of sticker shock for some of you. Daryl, I see you in chat. But I do think this is doing a lot, and for the right brand, I think this could really be just like the single typeface that they need for their entire brand. So let's do the A to Z here. I'll show you these chopped off serifs. I'm not going to spend too much time on any of them today doing the A to Z because, it's a Neo-Grotesk. We've all seen Neo-Grotesks. I'll stop on the characters that look a little bit more interesting. This G is pretty interesting. The one thing about this G, let's go ahead and put this up to like a heavier weight. The one thing about this G is when you get to really heavy weights, it's really closing in on itself. And we zoom out for a second and mess with this width on here. The G is, you got to make this big and you got to know what the word is going to say. Like someone would need some context because this G is going to, I don't know. The G just looks like nothing to me at this real heavy weight. But you could always pull it back. You could pull it back a little bit. Don't go completely black. Just go like extra bold or something like that. That's a little bit more legible. But the G is the one character that I noticed that kind of folds in on itself. I kind of like it, but I don't know how legible that's really going to be for real life. But at the sizes that you should be reading text, I think you're pretty set. K, like the crossbar on there. M, I already talked about the splayed legs on that. You will note the green glyphs. Those are going to be ones that have alternates. We saw this recently as well. This little notch in the R there in the top of that leg. Interesting way to create some contrast. I forget what typeface we saw that in. I think it might have been MDUI from Mass Driver. This ampersand I thought was interesting. I was like, man, that is a weird ampersand. And then I looked and all of the ampersand, maybe not all of them, but other ampersands from Superior Type are also like that. And I had to check and I was like, is there, because they're in the Czech Republic, Czechia. I had to check. I was like, is there like a standard ampersand that's different in Czech than there is in the US or in English? And yes, there is. I will show you two different alternates for that. There's also an alternate for the @ symbol, which is pretty cool. It's an interesting choice though. We've got some alternates for the A's. This stuff here, we're looking pretty standard. But you do have some curves. You've got the E curved here. You've got this F curved on the left side of that crossbar. This font was actually inspired by running. He created this originally for his friend's running club, and then it turned into expanding into this giant, what they're calling a super family with the 3 different widths. But most of this is looking pretty normal. It is cohesive, so those curves, we saw it on the F, and we're seeing it on the T right here. So if it was only on one character, I might kind of be like, that seems strange. But you're kind of seeing it everywhere. The Y, we're also going to see an alternates for this. The fun thing about this, and we'll see it specifically with that Y, is that this typeface can get much more sober and it can get much more wild. But let's go ahead and look at this in body copy real quick, and then I'm going to show you some of these alternates. No, I lied. Let's look at the alternates real quick since we're here. I don't know why I would skip ahead like that. Let me go ahead and show you. One thing I love about this, in the last video we were talking about Baskerville Sans, and it was a typeface that's apparently in progress, but it was released and you can buy it. So for me, that's not really a big excuse. This one has all of the stylistic sets labeled, so I can see right on the side here, alternate Q, boom, alternate Q. You get that Avenir style Q. The tail isn't super prominent. This one's definitely more prominent, but this one, you'd be able to stack your text a little better. It looks a little more traditional. Let's see, what else do we have here? We've got the ampersand, like I said. 2 different ampersands here. We've got this one here is a little more traditional right here. It's got a little bit of an interesting lean to it. You'll see when we look at the other grotesques. This might look normal right now, but compared to some of the other ones, it does have its own little quirk to it. But this one here is my favorite. This is the first alternate, and I don't know, something about that one. It's pretty unique, and it fits the font really well. That's actually my favorite, and it feels more natural to me. This one, it feels kind of top heavy, but that is the default. Alternate @ symbol. This one I think is going to be a little bit, I don't know, a little bit of a Marmite effect, where like either you're going to love this or you're going to hate this. The one question I have for this one is, why is it slanted? And I checked to see, like, maybe you can like unslant this, but like even the italic version is slanted, even more slanted. So you can see here, if we do the slider, that's the italic. This is the Roman. So I'm not sure why this @ symbol is slanted like that, because let's say we were gonna, let's do this right here. Well, Like if we were going to type an email, that is kind of awkward. So I'm not sure what the choice was with that one. Looks great by default. But yeah, I mean, you don't have to use it, obviously. But I did find that a little strange. It's fun. Maybe it'd work better at italics and only italics, but I'm not sure why it's not upright. Alternate A's on this one. We got two different alternate A's. We've got the single story right here. Looks nice, very cohesive with these first four letters. I mention this every time, but that's going to look great in logos that you want to be really cohesive, you know, do the Swiss international type style. This one here, getting a little bit wilder. You got that like almost like a Futura top on there. Very abstract, very angular. And I'm going to show you all of these wild ones put together, and I'm going to show you all of the sober ones put together, so you can kind of see the versatility of the typeface. We've got the G with that same angular bottom on it. The I's and J's here, there's actually not an alternate for the I and the J, but there's an alternate for the dots. So it's going to go through all the punctuation as well. You can get these rectangular ones by default, or you can get the oval-ish ones, the rounded ones, with the alternate. This is another nitpick that I'm going to have for this one, and it is that this dot is pretty wide for legibility in terms of like the alternate lowercase I that's going to have that line across it. Let me see if I can find it. So you're going to have a couple different things. This one right here, like that, you might have a problem with that, but this is the one I was thinking of with the line. I mean, they've got that one pretty big on there, but I do think there's a little bit of, I feel like the dot should just better match the width. I think it's just a little bit too wide, but you know, if it's trying to set us apart from this entirely saturated field of Neo-Grotesques, I'm gonna let them do their thing. I'm not gonna hate on it, but for me, I don't love those dots. I think I just put a couple of V's in there, maybe. I don't love the dots. I don't absolutely hate them, but I do think for certain languages it could be a little bit of an issue. Got the alternate R there, and just a couple more here. We've got the Y. We've got two different options for the Y. So like I said, we can get a little bit. And we can get a little bit. Oh, that's the uppercase. Where's my lowercase? We can get a little wilder, and we can get a little more sober. Keyframe holder says that they agree with the dots being too wide. Yeah, I just think they're just a little too wide. So there's the alternate Y's here. There's lowercase y that gets a little crazier, and then the sober Y would be great for text. There's also an alternate Y up here. I didn't have this one in green. Let me go ahead and do this real quick. Boom. Alternate Y here, that one's pretty wild. And then you've got this alternate Y here that goes at an angle. I think both of these are pretty characterful. Obviously, this one more so, but even this one, you don't see an uppercase that follows that top bar right there too often. You're typically getting the line straight down the middle. But you know, if you wanted to have a little bit of style in a logo or some sort of poster or something, I could see that being a fun alternate to play with. And lastly here, we've got the alternate 3. Boom. And I kind of like this one. I think if you were going with the alternate ampersand up there, that could be a nice combo. I feel like they match pretty well. Yeah. Let's see here. We've got tabular proportional numbers. You're throwing the one, throwing that bar on the bottom of the one, spacing things out. Nice to see. Great if there's going to be a workhorse typeface. That one does have a pretty unique, I don't know what you'd necessarily call that, beak, the top part on it. I've never seen one so low. It does match the rest of the typeface. No alternate for it. So like I said, the lowercase f, lowercase t, and this one right here, probably some other characters as well, do have that curve, and it's a unique characteristic for sure. I've got the at symbol, and I've got the fraction bar here. Let me go ahead and show you the fractions real quick, because this does have real fractions. Boom, very nice. And then also it's got case sensitive forms. So you can get this crossbar to go, or that's crossbar, the slash to match perfectly for uppercase or numbers. And then you've also got the at symbol up here. So if you wanted to set your email or handle or something in all caps, which I often used to do when I would sign like my Instagram fan art and stuff like that, I would use all caps. And I always have to push the at symbol up the baseline with Avenir, but case sensitive forms. On a Rytual, no need for that. Let me show you this in body copy because this is going to be a workhorse. You're going to want to use it in body copy. Here's the full layout. There's that ampersand and super black weight. That's my favorite character for sure. I love the way this thing folds in on itself. I know I complained about the G a little bit. This ampersand though, I don't know. I love how tight that gets. Not sure what weight we went up with here. It's just regular black up top, but this is just regular right here. You can see it looks really, the color of this in terms of there's no heavy spots, there's no light spots. It's a very good texture from the typeface. I didn't swap out the characters. I do think these Ys could be pretty distracting in here. If I was really setting some text, I would probably swap this out for the alternate that's much more sober. I'd probably swap out a few of these characters if I'm being honest. I'm fine with the headlines and branding and posters and even subheads being in the default stuff, but I would probably sober up quite a bit of this. But the italic stands out pretty well. I don't know that it's... Yeah, I mean, it stands out pretty well. It's not the most like standout. It's not going to stand out like true italics, but it stands out well enough. And then the bold here obviously stands out very nicely. So I do think, like I said from the beginning, this is like a workhorse with like a punch to it. And I think that for the workhorse things it needs to do, you know, with just body copy and things like that. And look, I broke the rule you said you shouldn't do and put one line on the bottom there, or one word by itself. I think it looks great in body copy. Here are all three of these lined up like this with the alternates all turned on and turned off. And you can see I wrote text alts up here and display alts on the bottom. He's not calling them that, but I am, just for how I would use them. And you can see I went with the rounded dots on there because at least they're not going to look as much like lines as this one here does. I do still think they're a little too wide, but at least when they're rounded, they're not quite as what's the word? They're not quite as ambiguous. I went with the Avenir Q up here, the typical Y, the single story A. I don't think that the single story A is actually better for text, but I just kind of wanted to show you a difference. Same with the uppercase Y up here. I don't think that I would actually use that for text, but I wanted to show you all the alternates. And then you can see, like I said before, the dots get rounded on punctuation and stuff like that as well. Pretty characterful exclamation, or no, question mark there. But these dots are pretty big on the square one. And then this is the default that we just looked at. Then if you want to get really wild with it, most of the stuff that's getting, you know, pretty crazy is in the lowercase, where you'd get like that A, the G, the R, and the Y. And you can really get pretty angular with it. Yeah, and then you got that crazy @ symbol. So here we are with all of the weights and all the widths. And I feel like sometimes it's easier to look at it like this and realize how much this font has going on, how much this typeface has going on. I can't say font because this is one variable font. How much this font has going on. Like I said, 54 styles in total because you've got 9 weights, 3 different widths, and then we've got italics on all these as well. And we just changed all the sizes, so I apologize. We're gonna have to go back, but all these do have weights. If I try to change the slant right now, it's gonna change all of them. I would love if you could highlight it like this and use the slider to change the slant, but for whatever reason, it doesn't work on here. Maybe I'm asking too much of the typeface, but what I'm trying to say is I do think that looking at it like this kind of shows you how much this typeface has going on. You know, you do have all the alternates like we just looked at. Looks good at body copy and stuff like that, but this is what really makes it more of a branding typeface, in my opinion, is just having the extra widths and stuff like that. So is it worth the price tag? I don't know. I mean, that's not, it depends on the use case for it. It is one of the more expensive typefaces that we've looked at in this category, but I think it's doing some unique things that not every other Neo-Grotesque is doing, as we're going to see. We're going to look at 2 more of them, and I've got 3 very different price tags on 3 very different typefaces. So this is the first one, Rytual. It's doing some interesting stuff. Goes pretty crazy on the weights, where you get really thin, really thick. And then we got 3 different widths on it. So that was Superior Type, Rytual. Next up, let me check chat. Okay, we're good. Next up, our second deep dive here is coming from Fontfabric. This one might be a little bit faster to get through just because they are being quite traditional with it, and I don't hate it, but they are. It's pretty Helvetica-ish. So the second new release today, or second deep dive today, is from Fontfabric, and it is Fabric Grotesk. They liked it, you know, they're confident enough in it. They put their name on it, and I can appreciate that. This one is also a variable font. No reason to stay on this page for too long, other than I want to point out the pricing on it because I do think, we can look at that on not Instagram. We can look at that on Affinity here. Let's go ahead and get to Fabric Grotesk. I'll give you the details right off the bat here. $140 to $5 for the family on desktop. So like I said, we've got 3 different fonts here, or 3 different typefaces here, 3 different price tags. Fabric Grotesk is more traditional, but it's still doing some interesting stuff. So here are the designers here. Not gonna butcher these 4 names, but it looks like Plamen, Ani, Vika, and Kirill. I lied, I did butcher them, but it's coming from Fontfabric. 18 styles, also variable. Let me see what the axes are on that. We've got weight and slant. So we're going to have 9 different weights, it looks like, plus italics. 814 glyphs, 26 open type features, 323 languages. You can purchase this from the Foundry. Once again, this is a full trial. I didn't put it here, but standard license. Let me fix this or it's going to bug me. Standard license on this one. And what I mean by that is just this right here, desktop web app. I don't mind if they break out EPUB and digital as. A lot of times you'll bundle app and EPUB. I'm not even sure if you guys can see this. So maybe that would be more standard, but I don't know. I don't know how many people are doing EPUBs and apps. So for me, if they break out desktop web and app, that seems standard. But this is Fabric Grotesk right here. Let me go ahead and show you the variable to get things started. We have weight right here. It goes down to thin and goes all the way up to black. And this one is much more, you know, it gets heavy. It gets heavy, but you can see this G right here if we're just going 1-to-1. This G doesn't fill in quite as much as we were seeing a second ago with Rytual. Is it doing as much interesting? Is it being as interesting as Rytual? No, but not everyone wants to be that interesting. Sometimes you want your font to just kind of disappear, and I feel like Fabric Grotesk fits that bill. Fabric Grotesk is one that's much like Helvetica. It's going to be very neutral. It's going to disappear, but it's not quite Helvetica. You know, if you want something that's a little bit different from what everyone else is using, I think that's where this one finds its place. Also, the price tag, $145 for the family. That's what I said, right? $145 for the family. You're not going to get Helvetica for $145 unless it's already bundled on your desktop, and then you're going to have to check your license. Obviously, you could rent it through like Adobe Fonts, but this one you could buy the license outright. Let's go ahead and do the A to Z now that we've seen that. It does have a slant on it. I guess I should have shown you that. It does have a slant for the variable slider as well. Very nice, nice and smooth. Once again, it's more of it's more of a grotesque, or not more of an oblique than like a real italic. But I don't blame them for calling this italic. I call everything Roman and italic, even when they are technically like upright and oblique. Can't be bothered. I'm gonna call them Roman and italic as well. But you're gonna see this is pretty much what you would expect from a Neo-Grotesque. Everything's going to look very similar to, you know, Helvetica. It's going to look very similar to something like, even like Avenir with some of the characters. Avenir's a little bit more geometric, but it's going to look like what you would expect if I told you it's a Neo-Grotesque. If I told you a typeface was named Fabric Grotesk, this is probably what you would expect. I do think Fontfabric is a good foundry. I don't really cover bad foundries, but I mentioned last time that they put out Nexa Pro, Nexa Slab, stuff like that. That's probably their most famous one and probably what most people would know them for. As you can see, we've got quite a few alternates on here. Let me go ahead and check my notes so I don't miss anything. Yeah, let's go ahead and look at the alternates. We'll start out with, let's just do them in order. They also have theirs labeled. So I'm going to do them the order that they have them labeled on the side panel here. So it makes it easier for me, but I do appreciate that they've labeled these for me. I don't have to hunt around and try to figure these out. Did I get the right one? Angular F. Oh, Angular style. Okay, so they've set this one. Sorry, confused myself for a second. They do have, you can do these individually if you want, but they have a button here for Angular style, and it's just going to switch a bunch of the characters at once. And funnily enough, we're going to be getting something kind of similar to what we just saw with Rytual. So it's a pretty normal at its base, but you can see the R, you can see the T, you can see the J up here, where they're getting those angular shapes instead. I'm not sure why the G is turning from a 2-story to a 3-story for this angular one, but it is. That's built into the set. So you are getting something a little bit wilder, I guess. I don't think that it pushes quite as far as Rytual does, but you are getting some of those same characteristics where you're getting those angular shapes on here. Even so far as the Q, where you can get that angular bottom on the Q, bottom on the Y. I mean, they're pushing pretty close to it. So you're not going to get, this is pushing to kind of like the default of what Rytual was. It's not pushing beyond it like they did with their alternates. But then you get some of the typical ones that you would expect. I really like this S right here, or I mean this A right here with the S, the reversed S on it. It looks like Helvetica. I'm going to repeat that over and over, but I do think that it looks nice. The single story as well looks nice. This definitely has more contrast in it than we saw with Rytual. You can see that those connections there are a little bit, how would you say this? The joints are a little bit thinner, a little more contrast in there. We do have an alternate L here that's going to give you a little bit more legibility, differentiate it from the uppercase I, as well as the number 1. So the 1's already pretty good. But if we switch this to the alternate L as well as the angular I, there you've got some great legibility. So I think we're in workhorse territory for this one as well. I think that with some of the features, you could turn this into something a little bit wilder. The default is going to be pretty vanilla, which is great if that's what you're looking for. And then it looks like we've got some legibility features that are going to work pretty well as well. Let me continue on here. We've got an alternate for the Y. I think we just saw that one though, right? Oh no, that was so the angular Y is that one. And then we've got this default right here. And then we've got an alternate that's a little bit more geometric, it's almost like 2 circles. So that's kind of fun, a little friendlier. I always think this one's really friendly when they match the U instead of the V. It doesn't work for every voice, for every brand, but that could be one little thing, that you could change. I don't think there's any way you're going to get that from Helvetica, but I could be wrong. Somebody can correct me if there's an alternate for that. And you've got an alternate for the R as well. So you can get a little bit more, not quite a Helvetica R there, more of a Arial R, but you can get a little bit more of a Swiss R from that rather than the straight leg. I prefer the straight leg. I always like this one. I never really liked the Helvetica R, but I know it's iconic, so don't hate me. It does have the workhorse features in terms of the numbers and stuff. So you got your proportional, you got your tabular. Once again, they're throwing that the baseline on the bottom of that 1 there to get it going. We got real fractions, boom. And we also have the, oh, look at this. The slash on this one is perfectly baseline to X height already. That's interesting. So case sensitive forms don't matter at all for that one. I like that. I like that it's just there. But you do shift the at symbol and probably some other stuff to get you some case sensitive forms. So those can match better with the uppercase. And that's all we're going to look at with this one. We're going to look at it in body copy, but in terms of alternates and things like that, I think that the alternates match the price tag. I think it's doing some really nice things. Let's look at it in body copy. As a spread, it looks fine. They really didn't have any interesting glyphs or anything. I just threw the generic currency symbol in there. I always like that symbol. But it looks great up here in, what is this, black? Got this in black right here. Extra bold. Yeah, we could slide this down a little bit, but I like it in black for the headline. I think it looks great. It's got some presence. And the dots match the width of the eyes. But just in general, I think this body copy looks great. I think all of the body copy is going to look great today, but This one particularly, you know, in the words of, oh my gosh, I can't think of her name now, but we read best what we read most, and if you read Helvetica most, that's why we can read Neo-Grotesks so well. We've seen so much stuff printed in Helvetica, and I think that you're really going to be able to read this one very, very well. You're not going to have the weird Y from the default of Rytual. You're not going to have those curved letters and things like that. So if you want character, you know, I think Rytual is the way to go. If you want something that feels very, very familiar, not really taking many risks, but you don't always want to take risks. So italics look great. They stand out well enough. And then once again, the bold right here with Digital Age stands out as well. And I think this looks perfectly fine in body copy. So we're going to come back to this towards the end when we compare all of them, but we're going to move on to GT Mechanik right after I do my conclusion for this one. We already talked about the pricing, talked about the license. Yeah, I guess that's it. So this was Fabric Grotesk from Fontfabric, $145 for the family on desktop, standard license. I think this is kind of like a standard font. Like if you wanted a Neo-Grotesk that wasn't Helvetica, this is an affordable one to look at. Last up is going to be the big one here, GT Mechanik. I actually pulled up GT Mechanik in episode 37 because I had a beta version of it, but I just got the full release version. And we're not going to look at this full mini site. I do have this linked in the description. Go ahead and pull this up if you want. But we looked at this in episode 50. But the cool thing with this one, or the interesting thing with this one, is that it's got a variable slider that goes from mono up to proportional. And there's actually much more going on with it than I initially thought. When I was looking at this one, I kind of dragged my feet doing the review for it because I was like, I don't know. Like, is it even like... I know that it's Grilli Type, but is it worth doing a review? And that's kind of like, well, like it's a big enough, I feel like there's enough interest in anything that Grilli Type does that even if this typeface was bad, it'd be worth doing a review and being like, yeah, it's kind of bad. But luckily it's not. And the more I played around with it, the more I realized what it really is doing. And it's pretty cool when you get into it a little bit more. So I have both of these linked in the description. This one here is the mini site. It's just, you know, kind of eye candy. And then you've got the store website as well, and you can see all the weights and stuff right here. So weights and the tone, as they're calling it. They're going mono, semi, and poly. I'm going to give some different terms for that when we get down here because that's what they used in the PDF. So let me go ahead and pull up the PDF real quick because I do think I want to give you some context on why I'm not going to be calling these mono, semi, and poly. And that's because I really think that these were renamed. On here, you can see mono, semi, and poly. I know that's way too small for you to read, but I'll zoom in when we get down to the bottom here. If we get down to the last page here, and we zoom in on this right here, let me try and get over there for you. I think 500% is as big as we can get. I apologize. They've labeled them right here, mono, text, and display. And as soon as I saw that, this font made so much more sense to me because I could not for the life of me understand why you would want to do what I'm about to do, which is, let's go ahead and take this weight down to something normal, 400. We're going to do all the normal stuff we normally do, but I just want to show you this tone slider and show you my confusion and then show you why it makes sense to me now. So there's this tone slider on here, and you've got there's what they're calling mono. Makes sense. It's monospace. You can see the characters all align. It looks like most monospace fonts. There's only so much you can do unless you're getting really wacky with it. There's only so much you can do with a monospace font. It's going to look like a monospace font. The characters, they have to fit the same space. A lot of times fonts are trying to use the same metric space as well. So GT Mechanik mono right here. On the complete other side of that, I thought I understood this one as well. I thought this was just proportional, but this is what they're calling poly, and it's the display weight. And you can see if we zoom in on, let's go ahead and zoom in on this B right here. You can see there are no ink traps on this. Everything just goes, it just slams right into it. It doesn't, there's no attempt at making this nice for small sizes. It doesn't look bad right here at all. But if we put this slider dead set in the middle, I think at 50 it should be at semi. Nope, must be somewhere else. We're going to use the drop down and get this at semi-regular. Boom. And this is kind of in between the two. And at first I was like, why would anybody want something like slightly in between monospaced and proportional? Keep in mind, it's not monospaced and proportional, it's monospaced and display. And this middle size here is text. And what they're doing is they're keeping a lot of the characteristics. We're going to look at all this closer. They're keeping a lot of the characteristics of a monospaced typeface, an electromechanical text system, as they called it. And they're putting that into a typeface that is more proportional, that is going to work a little bit better in body copy. But it hangs on to a lot of those defining features that were present due to the restriction of needing it to be monospaced, needing it to work for these electromechanical machines. So that's at 33% there. So what was throwing me for a loop before was kind of like, what is somebody going to do in the middle here? Because you can get this slider where you can kind of get monospaced, and like you can see the serifs starting to pop out between like 33 and 1. And when you get all the way down to 1, that's going to be your monospace. So hopefully that'll make sense. Let me know if it doesn't. But it's, instead of thinking this as mono, semi, and poly, I don't even know what semi or poly mean. Think of this as mono, text, and display. And this typeface is going to make a lot more sense. So as we saw, you have those 3 different things. I'm going to set this back on, let's just set it back on display, just because it's easiest to pull the slider all the way to 100. We're going to put this on display, and we're going to play around with the weight for a second here, because you can get pretty thin, but not like super thin. They're calling this thin. It's not as hairline thin as we saw with Rytual, but it gets thin enough. And then you can take this all the way up to black, and it gets nice and heavy. Is that black? Yeah, it's black. Nice and heavy. I love a nice, heavy, geometric typeface. This is kind of a geometric neo-grotesque. I think it fits into the neo-grotesque category, but you can see how geometric this C is. You can see the E. You can, when you look at the lowercase o, it's very geometric. But then you look at the uppercase, and these are very clearly neo-grotesque. This, the O and the Q, they're proportional. They're not like perfect or optically perfect circles like Futura or something like that. So very nice weights on this. Let's go ahead and do the tone on this so we can see all of them. Monospaced, I don't know that you're going to do monospaced in black, but you certainly could. They really had to build in some ink traps and some spacing on these characters, because you've only got so much space before it just completely fills in. And then let's go ahead and show you a semi, or I'm going to call it text, but they're calling it semi. From now on, I'm just going to say semi, or I'm going to say text. Text black, you can see right there. So you can see, once again, that they're really holding on to some of these characteristics from the monospace, but they're pulling them into the text version. And that's really what sets this one apart, is it's going to have some of these weird quirks and characteristics of a monospace font, but it's going to be set as if it is a proportional text font. Okay. Hopefully all of that makes sense. Let's go ahead and look at the details real quick. Grilli Type, we've got our 3 designers right here. Once again, I'll go for the first names: Shiva, Reto, and Noel. Hopefully that's kind of right. 42 styles on this one, because we've got 3 tones, as we just saw. I think we could, yeah, we'll go with tones. I'll settle on that. 3 tones, 7 weights on each one of these, plus italics. It's variable. 589 glyphs, so it's not super deep. I think that's enough for a workhorse for sure, but it's not like getting crazy with like the 1400, 1200 glyphs that we see in from some of the ones that we looked at today. Same with open type features. 18 open type features. It's not trying to do anything crazy. It's just like unapologetically like, here's what I am, and that's all that I am. 333 languages. Availability, I didn't write on there. Purchase it from the Foundry. It has a limited trial on it. I apologize, these aren't wrote in there. I'm not sure why they're not. Limited trial on this one. I do have the full font though. I have a review license from Grilli Type, so that's how I got this. I can use it to the review. Can't use it for anything personal or commercial. Just use it to show you guys the font. $420 for the family on desktop. So we're between the two. 4 times more expensive, or not, like 3 times more expensive than what we saw with Fabric Grotesque, but significantly cheaper, about $1,000 cheaper than Rytual. So standard license on this one, desktop, web, and app. The 420 is going to get it for you on desktop. Okay, I'm going to get a drink of water. We're going to look at this in detail, and then I'll... actually, I think I have all these. Yeah, we're going to look at these all like this, and then we're going to look at this body copy, and we'll get through the rest of it. Okay, so I already showed you the mono, so I'll zoom through this real quick. We'll do top and bottom at the same time. Couple things to note. Monospace, these do have ink traps because they're assuming you're going to be using this at, coding sizes. Even at coding, these could be light traps. But at small sizes, typically how monospaced font is used, the ink traps make sense on this. As we saw before, the display doesn't have any ink traps. It's doing some, it's filling the space with this I and the J here, but interestingly, the J up here has no top bar on it. Sometimes, quite often, with new monospace fonts, you see that top bar on the J to kind of fill in that negative space. This really is leaning into that old electromechanical aesthetic, and it's not trying to be anything else. It's very authentic to its source material, whatever that is. They don't specifically state it, but you can kind of feel it. So let's go ahead and look at display, and then we'll kind of find the middle ground between these. So like I said, no ink traps in this one here. We saw the display already, but it looks really nice. I would not guess, like if somebody showed me this font right here and they showed me the mono up here, I would not say like, oh yeah, those are one variable font. That's one font file. Especially before obviously before variable fonts existed, you wouldn't know that. But like, even if you know what variable fonts are, you wouldn't expect that monospace typeface and this display typeface are the same font. Even if they look the same, you'd be like, okay, maybe they're like in the same family and they're 2 different fonts. I don't have numbers on here because I didn't want to get lost in the numbers. The numbers are all pretty much the same. Let's look at this in between here. And do we have ink traps? Yes, because this is made for text sizes. The ink traps are in there. They're not huge. So let me go ahead and show you this one again. These ink traps are just a little bit bigger. I know this is the minutia of this is nonsensical, me trying to show you these right now. But the ink traps are there. They're just smaller. And then this typeface, you can see that F with the giant crossbar on it. It's hanging on to some of these characteristics. The G is pretty narrow. The uppercase G is pretty narrow. The I and the J, though, they're normal. Nice big dots on them. That's kind of fun. Maybe a little too big, but I'm here for it. I'm okay with that. But yeah, everything else feels as expected. It feels like a monospace font turned into a text face. So that's how I think you should think of these. Don't think of it as mono, semi, and poly. Think of it as mono, text, and display, and I think it makes a lot more sense. Let's compare these in body copy. So left to right here, we have mono, text, and display once again. And they all have their own vibe. I think all of them work. I think particularly these two, mono and the text size. Obviously, these work the best in text. The display, it looks fine on the screen right now, but I just think the spacing and stuff like that, it's not really built for those small sizes. But these two here, both of them look great. Very different vibes, obviously. As you can see, the same text is just typography article from Wikipedia, same text on all of these. And if we look at where digital age is, you can see how much the spacing is different between these. So everything is exactly the same on these, except one's mono, one's text, and one's display. You can see on the display one here, digital age is much higher up because the spacing is going to be a lot tighter. Digital age is slightly lower on the text one. And we get down to mono, digital age is all the way at the very bottom. I had to adjust these to get this onto the bottom line because typically it would fall off the page. But I really wanted to give you a good comparison so you could see how much more space each one's going to be taking up. Obviously, we don't have any... wait, no, we do. Oh, no, we don't have small caps. I apologize. I got a little confused. We don't have any small caps on any of these, so that top line's not going to have small caps. But we do have italics. And I don't think that these italics are really... It's not that they don't stand out. It's just that compared to like a lot of coding typefaces, let me make sure I've got the slant 100% on this one before I criticize this. Yeah, the slant is all the way up to 6, which is the highest it can go. Compared to a lot of coding fonts, I don't think that this italic stands out enough to use for coding. I think it does fit. I think it fits what it would. But if you were thinking about like an IBM Selectric, which had a very or IBM Plex, which is based on IBM Selectric, the italic is very different and really stands out. This one, maybe you'll notice that it's italic. I probably wouldn't if I was just looking at it like this. You can kind of see it, but you'd probably kind of guess, is that italic or not? I think the text one right here does a little bit better. But again, the angle isn't huge. It stands out enough. And then the display one, I feel like, same thing. None of them really have like a lot of slant to them. So italic's fine, but it's not ideal. I feel like it could slant just a teeny bit more. But once again, maybe that's authentic to the time period. Headlines look fine. You could throw any of these on headlines. I'd probably go for mono or display. There's no reason to use the text one for the headline. You know, it's just going to look kind of horsey. When you have these two other options in the same font, why choose the worst of the three options? It's going to be the best for text, worst for headlines. Choose the other two. But let me go ahead and show you this just a little bit more, break this down a tiny bit more. I want to show you, they do all have the same width. So there's no difference between the width of the characters. Teeny tiny fractional difference, I guess you could, like, if you really wanted to get pedantic, is pedantic the right word? If you really wanted to nitpick this, the text size is slightly smaller, thinner than the other two, but the other two match exactly. For all practical purposes, they all have the exact same stroke width for each of the sizes. But you can see the O and the H there. I use these because they're kind of perfect for looking at the two different main shapes that you would start when you're designing a typeface. And you can see how the O changes from mono on top all the way down to display on bottom. And you can see how much wider the H is going to get. So display sizes are going to be much wider, and then text mono, they get thinner. But as we saw, monospace takes up more space overall when you're writing it in a body copy. The other thing I noticed was at display sizes, the contrast actually goes down. This is the opposite of what you see from a lot of serif typefaces. At bigger sizes, you'd get more modern or more rational, and they would get much more thin or much more contrast. But you can see this display one right here actually builds up contrast. So you might even have the lowest, I think you have the lowest contrast at the display size, which is pretty interesting. And then as you go down, you get more contrast with the thinner joints on the mono and the text sizes, or the text tone. So that's pretty interesting. But you can see how they're related when you look at it like this. The ABC, like, they do feel like a family. I just would not have previously guessed that these were all one font file, just because I wouldn't expect a variable font to do monospaced and display and text. Maybe display and text, but not monospaced. That's just crazy. Okay, pulling it all together here. This is the typography article once again, but I just wanted to kind of show you how I would do this if I was writing it all out. How would I use all three of these? Use the display for the display. It looks great up top right there. Very nice. Use the text for the text. They're calling this semi, but use the text for the text part. It looks best. And then, throw your monospace down here for captions, or if you're doing code, obviously use it for code. It does have some fun little features, like it's got the circled numbers and things like that, but it doesn't get too crazy with the extra glyphs or anything like that. And it really doesn't have very many, there's no alternates or anything like that for the characters. I don't even know, it'd be really difficult to do alternates for something like this that's doing so much, going from mono all the way up to display. I can't imagine trying to throw alternates on top of it as well. But it does do proportional tabular numbers, stuff like that, case sensitive forms, everything we've already seen. So here's 4 different monospace typefaces. I'm gonna get a drink of water, and then I'm gonna explain why I have these on here. When I did my review, this was a long time ago, of ArrowType by Typographies, Jordi Embodas, Type Foundry. When I did the review of ArrowType, I hadn't really looked at a lot of monospace typefaces, and my initial reaction was that looks like IBM Plex Mono, obviously. And I compared them side by side. I stuck it on top of the other one. Let me go ahead and put this one green. Set it to 50%, set it up here, and boom. We don't even have to set it on 50%. Let's just stick it on top. And boom, I was like, whoa, that like really matches. It wouldn't matter because IBM Plex is open source. All you have to do is put credit in the metadata, and you can create a fork of it. You can create your own version of it. Horizon Type, it is what it is. Not my favorite font. They're chopping off the top and the bottoms. That's the thing with this one. Not a review of Horizon Type today, but I did want to point out, I did my review. I saw that these two typefaces were pretty similar, and I did a little bit of investigation. I asked the original designers of IBM Plex Mono if it looked like a derivative work to them. I asked Jordy at let me make sure I've got his name right. I want to make 100% sure because I don't want to be mad at me even more than he was last time. Jordy and Bodas. So I asked him, like, did you use IBM Plex as like a starting point for this? He said no. The original designer said no, it doesn't look derivative to me. So that's what I said in the end. I did like a little bit of a story and then said they're not the same font. Everybody else said they're not. I was wrong. Let's move on with our lives. Jordy didn't like that, sent me a very angry email. But the one good thing that came out of that was he said a lot of typefaces, a lot of monospace fonts share similar metrics. And if you put them on top of each other, they will look the same. So I tried it, and not all of them do, but many of them do. And 4 of them we're going to look at right now, including Horizon Type, IBM Plex Mono, Mechanik Mono that we just looked at right now. We're looking at GT Mechanik, and MDIO, which is Mass Driver's coding typeface, monospace typeface. Talked about that a few weeks ago when we talked about MDUI. All of these share the same metrics. So if I take Mechanik Mono here and I put it on top of that one, on top of MDIO, you can see it's the same. Put it on IBM Plex, you can see it's the same. Put it on top of Horizon Type, you can see it's the same. This is great for practical uses where you want to be able to have your code or whatever's in monospace and swap it out for a different font without shifting everything that you've ever made with that font. That's not something, that I thought of when I first started this channel. So shout out to Jordy for pointing that out, even if he was very rude when he did it. But I just wanted to point this out and show you what some of these other ones are doing. Particularly, I'm going to look at IBM Plex Mono because this is kind of like the default that I think a lot of people start with. It's open source. The things that I wanted to point out is that J right here. So that top bar on the J, you can see all 3 of these other ones are putting that top bar there. And it does a really good job of filling in the space and not making it have this giant gap right here. Obviously, you're not always going to have an I next to a J, but trying to type an A here. If you typed in A, you'd have even more of a gap there. Whereas if you typed in A up here, that top bar on the J there just kind of helps fill in some of that negative space. That's one of the things that GT Mechanik is doing differently, where it's not trying to be a new font and it's not trying to fix these things. It's really standing by the roots of these styles of typefaces. We can look at the R as well. See, the R's got the big base on it there. We have no base on this R right here, so it has a huge amount of white space around it compared to the other 3. I'm not going to go through a ton more, but I just wanted to point these things out because I thought it was interesting where you've got a lot of monospace fonts that all kind of all 4 of these are filling the exact same space, but they're doing it in different ways. And I think GT Mechanik is doing it in the most different way. There are similarities between all of these. Obviously, like I could look at the ABC and they're all going to feel kind of similar. But there are those places where even the F's another one right here. There's no crossbar. There's no baseline bar on the bottom of that F like there is up here. These little tricks that we figured out in recent years or in recent decades to kind of fill the space with these monospace fonts better. GT Mechanik's not doing it. it's doing its own thing. And that I feel like should be commended. I don't know that everyone's going to love that. I think some people will want the IBM Plex, platform that kind of like fills these spaces a bit more. But GT Mechanik definitely has more character when it comes to that. Switching gears completely, and we're going to look at the display version of it. So I got GT Mechanik down here at the bottom. You can see that, the display version right there. Helvetica on top, Fabric Grotesque, Rytual, and then at the bottom, GT Mechanik. I started off with this. We're going to finish off with this. You can see, if you showed this to your mom, if you showed this to your neighbor, unless they're a designer, they're going to assume that these are all the same font. It's nice to look at a spread like this and be able to dig in and really see the differences that exist here. I'm going to switch to Rytual. I'm going to look at Rytual first and remind you of the things that it's doing different. It's got those chopped off letters there. It's got the big crossbar on the K right here. You've got this quirky Q you could swap out for the more Avenir one, and then you're getting a lot of these angular forms. You can make this more sober, obviously, but if we compare that to our typical Helvetica, everybody knows and loves, it does have appropriately sized dots. No splay to M on it, so you can see how that M would fill space much better. You slam it, squeeze it next to other letters that have gosh, I can't think, that have stems that are straight like this. You could kern these really, really tight, and that's how Helvetica became the default back in the day. Put it really, really tight. You got your typical Helvetica R there. So all three of these are actually using the straight leg R's. Rytual did have that alternate, but all of these are using the straight leg R's. We've got bounce the GT Mechanik Fabric Grotesque. They're using the more Helvetica-ish R. Let me show you Fabric Grotesque because this was the second one we looked at. Just real quick, let me show you the ones. So you can see the one here, Helvetica 1, we all know and love. Pretty similar to Fabric Grotesque. This one is the weirdest one. Definitely the most unique with Rytual. And then we've got our monospace inspired one coming from Grilli Type with GT Mechanik. Let me show you Fabric Grotesque though. We'll do the same thing we just did and overlap this on top. I'm putting Fabric Grotesque in red and putting this on top of Helvetica. Obviously the spacing is different. Just the default like kerning and spacing is different. But if we look at these characters like one by one, with the A, the B, the C, the D, like you can see what I'm showing you, right? They're pretty similar in terms of what you're getting. The aesthetic, the style, the J is different. That's nice. But you see what I'm saying. This is not a clone by any means, but it's pretty familiar in terms of a Neo-Grotesque. Let me pull over the lowercase for you. X height's a little bit lower, it looks like, but you could see it's pretty similar. That's why I said, like, it's going to feel very familiar. The F's a little different, got a much bigger crossbar on there. Probably better for legibility. So maybe it's solving some of the problems Helvetica solved. To be fair, there is Helvetica New, Helvetica Now, but you can see, I don't need to go through the rest of the font. You can see it's doing things very similar to what Helvetica is doing. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I just wanted to point out that that's what it's doing. It's the truest of Helvetica alternatives that we have, that we looked at today. And it's also the most affordable, $145 for the family on desktop. It seems like a solid typeface. Fontfabric is a good foundry. So that's what that's doing. We saw what Rytual's doing, and now we've got GT Mechanik here, and you can see it's got a lot of the same similarities that we would see from Helvetica, and you might not have guessed that from the start. More of a Gotham G there, or an Avenir G. The one thing that that GT Mechanik here is doing different than the others, if we look at, let's look at the B. So if we look at the B here, see how the B just slams right into the stem? So this bowl, it doesn't try to pretend like it's going to be part of it. This A isn't like an S in reverse. It just goes right into the stem, like it's growing out of it. All of these other Neo-Grotesks, well, the A is a bad example there, but the B and the C here, see how smooth that is on these other ones? That's Rytual. If we look at Fontfabric's Fabric Grotesk, you know, these are all very smooth. They feel like they flow into it. The G might be the best example. See how this G flows into the stem? That's what you're going to get from Helvetica as well. The G, the bowl kind of flows into it. Whereas GT Mechanik is the only one of these where it just slams right into the stem and like it's not pretending to like be smoothly going into it. It just grows right out of it. So that is the biggest difference between these. Just to wrap all of this up, let me get a drink of water and we'll wrap this up. Just to wrap all of this up, I could probably throw my face cam on there for anybody that's left and wants to see me. Hello again. Just to wrap all of this up. Helvetica, obviously, we don't need to really talk about that. Helvetica is Helvetica. But Fabric Grotesk, I think, is an affordable Helvetica alternative. It's clearly meant to be an alternative to Helvetica. We saw how similar it is. It's doing its own things. It does have those alternates that can make it a little bit more angular, similar to what we're getting from default Rytual. Rytual doing its entirely own thing. It is, you know, playing in that grotesque space. It has all of the widths. It's got the narrow and the condensed width. It's got the really, really black weight that just completely collapses in on itself. It gets really, really heavy. It's got that hairline thin weight to it. And I feel like Rytual really stretches the most in that typical space where like Rytual can get pretty wild with the angular forms. And then it can get pretty sober and pretty text oriented with some of those alternates as well. But it's going to do the most out of these three in terms of the workhorse ability to get more narrow, get real heavy, get real thin, and then give you those different voices with the different alternates. Lastly, we have GT Mechanik. I've never seen a font like this. This one's the most versatile in like a very, very specific way. If you wanted that voice of like, just like electromechanical, old typewriters, old, I don't know, telegrams and things like that, where like electricity was being used, but the machines were still mechanical and you were still slamming metal into a piece of paper to get some ink. GT Mechanik is that's it. It's got the vibe of that, but it's versatile in a way that none of these other ones are, where you can get your monospace, you can get your monospace, you can get your text, and you can get your display all out of one. You don't have any widths or anything, but you do have a pretty solid variance in the weights. So weights, mono, text, display. With GT Mechanik, Rytual's got the weights and the widths and the alternates. Fabric Grotesk is, it's Fontfabric's take on Helvetica, more or less. I don't think they would say that, but I'll say it because it's Fontfabric's Helvetica. So let me go ahead and put my face on here. We're going pretty long today. Daryl says many Europeans typically write their ones with that slant, so that sometimes mail routing machines will misread them as sevens. Oh, interesting. The one that was on the Grilli. That's interesting. Yeah. Huh. Oh, you're saying so they won't? So mail routing, will misread them as sevens. Interesting. Yeah, I could understand. I could see that. Okay. I think that's going to be it. I didn't mean to go quite as long as we did, but I think we had some really good typefaces. Hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully you guys enjoyed looking at some Neo-Grotesks. I know that it's not typically what I do. I typically don't look at like 3 Neo-Grotesks, but it just so happened all 3 of these released within like a week of each other. And they're doing very different things. And I think that it's important to remember, even though people are sometimes sick of Neo-Grotesks, they are incredibly useful. And they're not all the same, despite the fact that they kind of live in the same very saturated space. We just looked at 3 that are doing 3 very different things. Fabric Grotesk, maybe not quite as different as like Helvetica or something like that. But if we're looking at these 3 in isolation, these 3 are doing very different things at very different price points. Which one would I go with? It would depend on the project. Okay, I'm gonna get out of here. I appreciate you guys for hanging out. Keyframe holder, thanks for chatting tonight. Daryl, good to see you again. Always good to see you. Everyone watching the replay, thank you for watching. I was Curtis Simpson. This was Typography News number 52. I'll see you guys on Tuesday. Bye.